Hello. This is actually a true story. Something that happened to my Uncle Roy. I think it was about 20 years ago. What happened was he used to be a plumber, and he used to work for a large company, and they had a conference up in a place called Norfolk, which is probably about 2 hours outside of London, and he was there for a couple of nights, and they were all coming back. Anyway, on the final night, instead of staying over at the hotel after the conference, he decided he wanted to travel back to be with my aunt. I don't think she was very well at the time. So, he left. Now, this is back just after the hurricane in '87 that Britain had, the only one we've ever had. We don't get many storms, so things aren't quite built to last. And a lot of the signposts had been blown down. So, inevitably, he did get a bit lost. Anyway, it was getting on to about 11 o'clock, and he felt as if he'd been driving around in circles for the past 2 hours. So, he stopped at a village and asked them if they knew of anywhere to stay the night. And they said, well, no, there's not really anywhere around here. I think it was a guy in one of the pubs, in the pub in the village, said to them that there was a woman who had a house about a mile from there, and she always, like, if there was anyone who was stuck for somewhere, she would always welcome them in. So they gave him directions, and he went down. Anyway, he turned up outside these most enormous wrought iron gates, and looming right up, made of really dark black wrought iron, and they had two enormous lion's heads on the knocker. So he opened the gates, drove in. It was a long gravelly path, this is how he described it to me, with pine trees going up all the way, as if they were almost touching the sky. And the path carried on, and it was gravelly, and it wound round a little bit until you came to the most enormous, what seemed like a mansion in the middle of nowhere, and it was lit up beautifully. So, and there was a few lights on in the house, and he could hear a bit of noise, so he knew that someone was still awake. So he got out of the car, walked up the steps, and he noticed they had these two lions' heads just on pillars just at the front of the house. Went to the door and knocked on the knocker. Anyway, a gentleman answered the door. It was a butler, I think, and he said, hello, can I? And he said, well, I explained the situation. He said, oh, come in, the lady of the house, she'll be more than welcome. So he came in, and she came up to him. She said, oh, hello, and he explained the situation to her. And she said, that's more, well, I've got plenty of room in this house. She said, I've actually got a bit of a family get-together this evening, so you're more than welcome to join in. He said, look, he said, thank you so much for your hospitality. He said, but I've got to get up early. He said, I promised my wife I would be home. So she said, okay, and she got this gentleman, it must have been a butler or something, to take him to his room. Anyway, he walked up this like massive flight of stairs, and then got along to this long corridor. It was a really, really long corridor, and it was the last door. And he opened the door, and he said, this is your room. Now, he said, the strange thing that happened to him when he got in the room, he said, there was such an atmosphere in there, but a horrible, scary atmosphere. So what he did, it was just one bed with a stool next to it, and on the other side was a little table with a little paraffin lamp, and on the little side table was a little book. So he got undressed and got ready for bed, and he just picked up the book, just have a look at it, and it was an old copy of the Bible. And he just opened the front cover, and it said, to Charlotte, my only daughter. Anyway, he closed it, didn't think anything of it, put it down. Anyway, he was just about to turn around and blow out the paraffin lamp when he noticed the door handle. Now, he hadn't noticed this before, but what happened was it was also a lion's head, and it was starting to turn ever so slowly. So he looked, and he was watching it, and suddenly the door kind of slowly started to open, and there was this little girl there in a long silken silvery nightdress, and she started to almost glide into the room. And he said he watched her, and he was absolutely mesmerised, and he couldn't bring himself to say anything at first, because he just felt speechless at this bizarre sight. And she went all the way down, and she stood at the very end of his bed, and he just looked at her for a little while, and he said, hello, little girl. And she didn't say a word. And he said, hello, little girl. Once more, and he went, hello. And she went, I'm not a little girl. I am a...